Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. This is the first part A of lecture 5 on Descriptive Statistics and Islamic Approach. In this lecture we will discuss the intellectual trends, the racist ideas on which the foundations of modern statistics are built. Before we start the lecture, some ideas that I was trained to believe in is which I have discarded is the idea of objective knowledge. If knowledge is objective, it is the same for everyone, whereas subjective knowledge is based on personal experience. Now, the ideas of secular modernity is a new religion of the West, although it calls itself a non-religion. And this is the most powerful religion because the ideas of secular modernity have now penetrated the minds of everyone living on this planet. Secular modernity defines the goals of life for us, and it defines the ways of living for us as individuals, as families, as communities and nations. This is what we observe when we see around. Nearly all minds are infected with these ideas. Because secular modernity claims to be objective, neutral and rational, it places itself above dispute and it has a position of privilege. Now, actually, it is just as subjective and as irrational and as particular in terms of having ethical standards as anybody else. So the traditional course on statistics should be named Statistics, a Secular Modern Approach, to indicate that this is one religion talking. In this particular course, I am trying to study statistics from a different perspective. All analysis must have a perspective. There is no analysis which does not have a practice, which does not have a perspective. And to pretend otherwise is a mistake. And it leads to the hidden and unarticulated assumptions becoming part of the analysis without anybody becoming aware of them. What we are doing can be thought of as an application of Michel Foucault's idea of the archaeology of knowledge. When you look at objective truth, then we think about whether something is true or it is false. If it's false, it doesn't mean anything, it's useless. And if it's true, then we have to accept it regardless of who says it. So the whole concentration of objective knowledge is to verify whether a statement is true or not. We don't care who said it or why he said it. As opposed to this, Foucault's idea is don't worry about truth or falsehood, worry about who originated this idea. When did this idea first come into existence? How was this idea used? In which intellectual battles were fought with this idea? And how these battles shaped the world, and how the idea itself was shaped by the forces that it was used to combat. So ideas are the most powerful tools in the arsenal of mankind, and actually the history of mankind can be thought of as a battle of ideas. And so this methodology, studying the birth of ideas and their evolution and change and their use in battles between classes of people, this leads to unique insights not available by any other method. There are multiple views on the transmission of knowledge from one person to another person and also from one generation to the next. One view says that we should look at the character and the purpose of the people who are giving us the knowledge. The other view is that we should look at the contents, the body of the knowledge transmitted. So, is it really possible that thoughts can be separated from the thinker? This is the idea of objective knowledge, that the thoughts can be separated. Subjective knowledge says that no, the thinker, the personality of the thinker affects the thoughts. I have come to the conclusion that we need to do both, that we need to look at both the character and the intentions of the thinker and also the objective character of the thoughts that were created by the thinker. So we need an appropriate mix of subjectivity and objectivity. In addition, I have, in my personal experience, come to the conclusion that Foucault's method of the archaeology of knowledge is truly exceptional and extremely important in enlightening us on the nature of the knowledge that we have. If we look at how this knowledge originated and how it was transmitted and how it changed and evolved over the period of time, this gives us unique insights into knowledge which no other method is capable of doing so. So in some sense, this lecture is an archaeology of knowledge of the statistics. Just as a brief preview of where we intend to go with this, the founding fathers of statistics were all eugenicists. Eugenics was an eminent and respectable field of knowledge, though currently the word even is not familiar to most. And the basis of eugenics was the idea of racial superiority of the whites. And the goal of eugenics was the extermination of inferior races and the encouragement and advancement and development and an increase in birth rates of the master races. Sir Ronald Fisher actually had 6 children to implement his ideas. So this is where we went to go. This is just a brief preview of. The idea of objective knowledge says that science, technology, these are all neutral. These are just out there, and we can use them for good or evil, to make money or to provide service to mankind. I would like to take the opposite point of view, that technology and science are not neutral. They are developed in response to human desires. So the desire for power led to the creation of atom bomb. This is not a neutral technology. The only thing it can do is kill. The multi-million dollars were poured into research to create terminating seeds. First, they developed crops which would have the capability of feeding mankind because they were very fertile and produced a lot of wheat and other food grains. But this would not lead to profits, so they created versions of these which would have seeds which were not fertile, so that the corporation could sell more and more every year to make more profits. So this is not at all neutral. This is actually a way to keep people hungry in order to make money. The big pharma industries has a huge number of examples of how the influence of the goal of making profits has influenced the direction of research. Today, orphan drugs, which can save lives of millions but don't make much money, are not being researched very much, and money is being poured into designer drugs which are genetically tailored to the billionaires who can afford to pay for them. To understand Malthus, we must start with the discussion of why there is poverty and how we can reduce it. It's important to note that these are not new questions. These are not age-old questions. Because although poverty is an age-old issue, traditional societies had mechanisms to deal with it. It was only the industrial society which creates poverty as a problem, because it needs poverty in order to create a labor force. And it needs to be able to sell lives on the labor market. And in order to do this, there has to be poverty, because only the poor will be able to, will be willing to sell their lives for money. So poverty is a creation of the Industrial Revolution. Once we recognize that we need to create a labor force in order to create massive overproduction in factories, then we need to subordinate society to fulfill this need. And so education in a capitalist society is meant to create mindsets suitable for the labor force. So the goal of life becomes to participate in the labor force in a efficient way. This means pursuit of careers, wealth, and power, but not personal goals like family, society, spiritual growth. excellence in human dimensions which are not marketable. So one of the strategies that was used to create the labor market was the creation of the ideology that there are different classes of people. Real human beings are capable of enjoying finer things of life, and they are the ones who are deserved to be wealthy. And then there are other low class, genetically impoverished human beings who look like human beings, but they don't have inner lives like us. They cannot think and feel, and they are closer to animals than to human beings. So this is basically the starting point of Malthusian thought. Instead of the standard humane solutions, Malthus argued that the poverty arises because the poor, who are genetically different from the rich, they breed faster than the rich. And poverty is inherited, and there's nothing you can do about it because it's genetically, the poor have bad genes, and so there's nothing you can do. Being kind to the poor, helping them, providing social services, all of this is counterproductive. Malthus was very strongly against this, because if you make life easy for them, then they will just breed faster. So Malthus said that we should sterilize the poor, keep them in crowded conditions, encourage the spread of disease among them to keep their numbers low, and that was his solution to poverty. This was very important. Very important in this arriving at this conclusion is the nature versus nurture debate. To what extent is poverty, intelligence, capabilities inherited, and to what extent can these things be developed by education and environment? So Malthus was very strongly on the side of heredity being a complete determinant of potential outcomes for human beings. The ideas of Malthus led to the creation of Eugenics, and which led to the creation of statistics, and those are the story that we will pursue later. His wrong ideas led to drastically wrong policies which created misery in the lives of millions over the planet. Even though his ideas were all proven wrong, Malthus did not have any evidence, empirical evidence for his ideas. These were just all figments of his imagination. And the failure of his ideas has become evident in terms of the empirical evidence that has accumulated since his times. He thought that population would increase geometrically because of the rapid birth rate, but in fact over the 20th century we have witnessed demographic transition, where as you provide prosperity and as you reduce the level of child mortality and you increase the level of education, people have fewer children. So you make poor comfortable and they will not have as many children. Similarly, food supply has not been increasing linearly. It has increased dramatically, so that food supply has kept pace with the population and even actually increased. The per capita supply of calories has been increasing gradually over the centuries. But even though all of his ideas have been proven wrong, they continue to be extremely influential and popular. Why? Well, basically because these are aligned with the class interests of the rich. These say that we have no responsibility to the poor. These allow for cruel and ruthless behavior towards the poor, and they give the rich an excuse not to provide social services and welfare. So to conclude, I would like to reiterate that Malthus is my candidate for the one person who has caused maximum damage to humanity, ahead of Hitler, Genghis Khan, and all other popular figures in this category. He created a completely imaginary theory which has no contact with reality, and this theory changed the discourse on poverty from compassion and humanitarian to ruthless and racist extermination. The battle against poverty was converted to a battle against the poor, for the elimination of the poor instead of elimination of poverty. Policies implemented along his lines created misery for millions on a global scale. In later lectures, we will see how one aspect of his thought flowered into eugenics, which was the inspiration for the creation of statistics, and shaped the tool that we use today for data analysis.